Muted.
I'm going to go ahead and hit the record button right now to get started. So today's topic is accelerating mobile app development. So this session is going to cover how to leverage CA mobile app services, which is a new solution from CA API management, and how you can rapidly create new applications with this tool. So today we have Dinesh Chandrasekhar, who's presenting, as well as Josh Lee. So I'm going to pass it over to Dinesh for a presentation, and then Josh is going to transition over into a demo as well. So thank you, Dinesh and Josh, for doing this today. We're excited to hear from you guys about this new product.
Appreciate it, Kristen. Can you do a quick mic check and make sure that you can hear me?
You sound great.
Perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to our second session in the series, as Kristen pointed out. Today, we will be focusing on accelerating mobile and IoT app development with CA mobile app services. Presenting with me is Josh Lee. He's part of the pre-sales division at CA. I am part of the product marketing organization, and I am responsible for the API gateways, mobile API gateway, and the mobile app services set of products under the CA API management umbrella. We are going to be spending first portion of this session talking about why mobile app development is, should be treated in a very critical way because, it is not as afterthought. It is not something that, should be considered as a part of your overall architecture in the sense that, that you're not treating it with the special needs of a mobile app developer. And the second part of the session would be more about the demo itself, a product demo that Josh would be handing off with his set of slides and the demos as well. So we'll start it off first, and then we'll follow through. And if you have any questions as we go along, feel free to type in the Q&A box that we have as a part of the WebEx session. So let's start off a little broader and dive down a little deeper as we go along. And I just want to understand, or at least make sure that we all understand that there's a mobile apps explosion without a question that's happening out there. And everybody understands, and everybody has at least one or two mobile devices with them. And it's across a broad range of platforms, not just iOS. There is a huge market for Android as well, and then there is the Windows operating system and so on. And so some of the key observations here are, from an enterprise standpoint, a lot of the business processes, at least 60% of the business processes, by in a couple of years, will be mobile optimized, and that's across a lot of these enterprises that are trying to go digital. There's a huge digital transformation initiative that is going on as well, as we have been hearing. If you are one of those enterprises that is trying to do a digital transformation, well and good, but at the same time, you're also considering one of these topics, and particularly, maybe optimizing some of your business processes to be mobile enabled as well. And then 70% of the cost of a standalone mobile app development project is related to integration, and this is a broader term. Integration is very loosely used by a lot of different vendors, a lot of different analysts in a lot of different ways. So as we go along, we'll also understand, what integration actually means to a mobile app. Is it always about getting back-end data from back-end systems, or is it more than that? So we'll talk about that as well. So some of the key findings from Gartner, and these are analysts like Richard Marshall and Van Baker that have been writing so many reports and key articles in this particular space. They've said that enterprises are finding it hard to go with one single development platform or one single approach which actually solves all their mobile app cases. This is a very important thing to consider, because if you are an enterprise that is trying to find an app development tool or app development suite, and you're saying, hey, let me find one vendor, let me get this one suite, and that's basically going to solve pretty much everything, that's probably not going to happen. We'll see some of the reasons as to why. The second thing is, of course, as I mentioned earlier, there are a wide range of operating systems, a wide range of languages that are being developed, and a wide range of devices. That leads to a lot of instability, with even your customer base for the matter. You would think that you're starting off mobile app building with iOS, and then soon realize that, some of your or most of your audiences or customers have shifted to Android or are shifting to Android, which then means that you have to give out like more Android-based apps as well, or support Android OS as a part of your releases, which leads to a need for a flexible architecture strategy. And then backlog, this is the most important challenge for any enterprise that is like, dealing with mobile apps building. So a lot of the enterprises that we talk to, have at least like 15 to 20 mobile apps that they're building on an average, and we're talking about like an average enterprise, medium to large kind of an enterprise. They are releasing per year, and which means the IT staff, particularly the mobile app development teams, are like bogged down with all these requirements, the need to update, maintain, develop new features, sustain new operating system requirements, everything, right? So all that has to happen and still need to push it out on time so that they can meet business demands, which leads to the challenge of, how do I maintain my backlog? How do I, deal with all this? So with that said, CA API management has 4 broad themes that we talk about always, because API management has been a great comprehensive approach for a lot of different aspects of enterprise challenges. And so when you look at an enterprise like this that is like going through digital transformation, you have a lot of APIs that you're dealing with, but what are those APIs used for? Are they just primarily for internal purposes? Are you exposing it to customers, partners? Are these used to access backend data? Are these used to enable mobile devices, IoT, and all that? So that's where the challenge comes in to understanding how these APIs can be managed, how they can be governed, how they can be secured. And so when we talk about CA API management, we talk about 4 broad themes. One is integration and creation of such APIs. So basically tying in all these existing backend applications, legacy applications, tying them through APIs, extending your existing architectures like ESB and all that through APIs and API management is kind of one of the core approaches that enterprises adopt. The second one is securing. As I mentioned, the moment you have more number of APIs, you are running into API chaos, the need for securing them. So in order to protect your enterprise against threats from outside, you are going to deal with securing your enterprise with strong gateways, strong API management solutions. And also not just, threats alone, it is also about controlling access to specific assets, in or outside the enterprise that you're controlling through the gateway, and maintaining a seamless user experience offered through single sign-on and identity management and all that too. But the third topic, which is what we are going to be focusing on today, is the acceleration of mobile and IoT app development. And this is not just allowing access to backend data, as I mentioned. It is also about building this partner developer ecosystem where you are allowing your APIs to thrive, being able to used by multiple partners to build out mobile apps, to build out IoT, to control IoT devices, and to leverage tools that reduce mobile app delivery time as well. And then finally, API monetization. The moment you have more number of APIs, it also means that you're also thinking about how do I make money out of this in order to thrive and sustain and maintain these APIs, whether it be a simple weather.com kind of an API, or it be something that you provide to check inventory, and you're allowing your suppliers and partners to access that and be enabling them for vendor managed inventory. How do you deal with those kinds of scenarios and whether you need to monetize them or not, So this is kind of the overall capability set for an API management solution, particularly offered by CA. And the one that we are going to be focusing on today is going to be this. So to speed up things a bit, I just want to mention, if we are talking about mobile apps, there are lots of different types of mobile apps. And particularly when you deal with enterprise mobile apps, you are talking about a broad range of use cases, broad range of scenarios, because you're talking about multiple industry verticals. Healthcare could have its own set of needs. Supply chain could have its own set of needs. Retail could have its own set of needs. So when you talk about these, then what are the common threads here? How do you make sure that you're addressing the needs of a mobile developer that can sit on any of these verticals? So some of the common threads you'll see are collaboration. So when you look at, most of these apps, a lot of them require a need to interface with the community or the ecosystem that they are dealing with, whether it be like a sales application where you're allowing your sales managers to communicate with their area sales VP or to their customers or to their counterparts in services, whether it be a different kind of retail application where you're allowing your retail stores to communicate with inventory management at corporate headquarters. All these types of collaborations require this kind of capability within your mobile application. And of course, that all leads into the need for user management, group management, and all that too. That all becomes kind of inherent. And the need to message in real time also becomes a very important and common thread. Whether it be a healthcare application or a retail application, this is something that typically is being used across the board as well. I am showing you examples of consumer apps, but you can draw the parallels to enterprise apps as well, and I'll show you in a second as to how this maps out into an enterprise app as well. Secure storage, this is again a very important and critical capability. The moment you start talking about mobile apps, you're talking about a different device altogether, right? And you're talking about data being sent out to that particular device. And you don't want always data to be sent back and forth, because there are documents, there are images, there are assets like that you want to download onto your device, and you want to store it locally, because when you're offline, you still want to work with it, you want to make changes to it, edits to it. In those kinds of scenarios, you're talking about storage capability in your device and the ability to use your device storage through the app and be able to get your documents in and out. In that kind of capability, again, developers spend a lot of time into building these kinds of capabilities, and we'll talk about how to simplify them. But you also have the need for encrypting them, securing them, because when you talk about verticals like government, financial, healthcare, you're talking about data that needs to be not only stored locally, but also confidentially and in an encrypted manner. So even if your device gets lost, mishandled, it won't be, accessed. The data will not be easily available to whoever stole the device. So that kind of capability is a must. And finally, IoT control. We predominantly are talking about mobile, no doubt here. But through mobile devices, you're still able to control IoT functions. Just a simple thing. A couple of weeks ago, we bought Amazon Alexa, at home. Alexa is at home. This is the Echo device, that you can play music. You can ask it to search the internet for Wikipedia and a whole bunch of other things. But you can control that from your mobile device. You can use Alexa to control the lights and the fans and the other home the devices like thermostats through Alexa as well. You can set that device to control those. And those kinds of devices like Nest and all that, again, become accessible to your mobile device that you can control pretty much from anywhere. Samsung, I released a fridge recently that has not only just an inbuilt camera inside the fridge that you can look into the fridge when you're at the grocery store trying to find out if you have, your milk in stock, if you need to replenish it or not. So you don't even have to call home. You can just look at the camera from your mobile device and actually understand, what you need to buy from the grocery store. So there are lots of things, of course, that are intelligent fridges that can even order things for you or through the internet directly themselves. I'm out of milk, let me order some more milk. So they can do all that too. So my point being that, again, IoT is a very essential extension to all this that we are talking about. It becomes a very inherent part of not only just, again, consumer lifestyle, but also from an enterprise lifestyle. We are talking about lots of different devices that go hand in hand in these various entities, enterprises, where IoT enablement becomes a real challenge, and how to control them, how to secure them also becomes a very important thing as well. And we'll talk about how these kinds of app development can be simplified again through mobile app services. So let's simplify this even better. Let's take up a simple customer example. This is a fictitious customer, so my Met devices probably doesn't exist. I just made it up. But this is a medical device manufacturer, so this is very real, right? So if you think about any such vertical, you would have a customer like that in that particular vertical. You may belong to one of those verticals, where you can draw some parallels to what I'm going to say next. So MyMed Devices basically is a manufacturer for large medical devices, and they distribute to a lot of different healthcare facilities across the country. Now, one of their key challenges is that their customer satisfaction remains poor in spite of great products they have. The reason being the products being complex, the customer service support model basically sucks. So what they found out was if they had this capability for service personnel to be instantly in touch with support personnel on site, if they were able to communicate, log tickets, they were able to enable the customer to log tickets, if they were able to allow this kind of collaboration and communication to happen, allow for documentation to be downloadable for the customers. If all that were to be made possible through a mobile device, it would make life a lot more simpler. Again, this is a very common scenario. You can apply it to pretty much any vertical that we talked about. So there came about a service application, a service app that they wanted to build out for enabling this particular set of stakeholders and thereby boosting their customer satisfaction. So in terms of the requirements, what they said was, we want 360-degree view of the customer, which means at any given point I should be able to open up the mobile app, type on a specific customer name, look at the actual customer info, not only just from who's the customer, but also what products they own, what kind of services that they've had in the past, what kind of trouble tickets they've logged in the recent times, or what open tickets they have, and everything, right? So pretty much all that information that they need about that particular customer. This is information that will come from back-end applications like CRM systems and stuff. Messaging, the ability to communicate with a supervisor from on-site, ability for a customer to talk to a sales rep, from wherever they are, saying, hey, I have this problem, can you take a look at this? Secure local storage, we talked about this earlier, the ability for the service rep to download support contracts onto their device, customer to download product training manuals onto their device, storing sensitive information because, we are talking about maybe credit card information. Maybe the service person has to get a credit card info to authorize a particular transaction. Maybe it has to be done offline because you don't get connectivity inside the labs or inside wherever they are. So it may have to be collected offline too, which means the credit card information has to be stored, encrypted locally for some time. Security, because we have to talk about medical device data to run diagnostics and all that, there needs to be some kind of security built in play. And of course, IoT device connectivity, we are talking about devices that need to be accessed from mobile devices as well. So maybe service personnel need to be running diagnostic tests on these particular devices. So again, I'm painting it broad, but again, you can draw parallels to same things across retail, government, healthcare, you name it. You can come up with a number of scenarios, requirements like this that cater to mobile devices and that run across messaging and local storage and security and whatnot, right? So if you look at building this mobile app, let's talk about what does it actually take to build this mobile app. This is very important because every time we think of a mobile app, we think of a slick UI. We think, hey, that's what matters most because if my UI is attractive, my customer is going to be happy. 100% right. If your user experience is good for a mobile application, you have won half the battle, because the customer is going to love it. They're going to come back. They're going to use it. So it's definitely a win. However, when building the mobile app, UX is only a part of the equation, a smaller part, if I can emphasize that, because there is a lot that goes behind the scenes, and that's what we're going to look at today. And this is a very key part of the section I want you to take away with, because this kind of lays out how this can be split out, how you think about analyzing an enterprise mobile app. So let's take out the UI for a second, right? So the UI developers can handle it. That's pretty much what they are good at. They can drag and drop and build these, simplistic UIs to make the customer life or customer experience much more easier. Talk about data. If you're accessing data like what we talked about earlier, like customer data that you're pulling in from various sources in the backend, you are talking about leveraging backend applications like SQL, NoSQL, all those kinds of data points, and the ability to expose those data points through APIs and consume those APIs from internal systems to outside into your mobile device, right? So the ability to call into an API that goes through a secure gateway ensures that you are an authorized identity that can actually access this particular data point and get that data from your backend systems and deliver it to you onto your mobile app. The other angles that we talked about in terms of enabling local storage, in terms of enabling user messaging, in terms of enabling user management, group management, and also, of course, IoT device connectivity. So if you look at all this, you are talking about, again, using a simpler way to access internally, because some of these require the capability to go behind the firewall to either publish, subscribe, or do some kind of API calling and all that too, leveraging maybe a messaging broker. Lots of things that could that would require this. But in order to do all this, there is a separate persona called the mobile app developers that are actually going to build all these back-end functions. So this is where the delineation needs to be clear, where you understand that a mobile app is not just about UI, but it's also about the data that goes behind the scenes. It's also about a lot about the back-end functions, which is where the initial point about integration comes in play. You can see all that here. So it's not just about data integration, but it's also about all these back-end function integration that we're talking about. This is where mobile app services helps. So CA mobile app services helps in enabling you to build all these different functions: storage, messaging, user management, group management, IoT device connectivity, everything, right? You can do all that in a very simplistic fashion using the SDKs that it offers. So instead of writing thousands of lines of code, you can just simply do that in just a couple of lines of code using the SDK. And this is something that you can see as Josh demonstrates in the latter part of the session. So if you look at this app again, the data functions can be done with a product that we call CA Live API Creator. This is part of the CA API management, product suite. So I'm just kind of laying it out so as to so that you understand that CA actually offers a very comprehensive solution that covers all parts of building this mobile app. Security functions, we have the CA Mobile API Gateway, which you saw was right dead on center, and the mobile app services basically runs on top of the mobile API Gateway. And in terms of backend function enablement and building the mobile app services, helps in doing that. So if you look at building out a mobile app other than UI, which is probably 30% of what you have to do, the 70% part is what this is. And if you can simplify this, obviously your developers can spend more time building out even more sophisticated UIs and in retaining your customers. So that's the whole point that we are trying to say. So by doing this, what MyMed devices would be able to do is bring down several weeks of coding into just simply a few weeks. So that's what we are trying to help tell our customers, that it's not about months of coding with thousands of lines of code and a lot of resources, but we are talking about simplified time frames to achieve what you're trying to do, so that you can go to market faster, reduce all your backlog that we talked about, and accomplish what you needed to do that your business wanted you to do. So CA Mobile App Services is essentially a set of app services. Think about it as open SDKs and APIs that are built to help you with enterprise mobile and IoT app development, making it much more simple and secure. It is built on top of the CA Mobile API Gateway, which means not only are you able to leverage the SDKs from mobile app services for building all these backend functions, but you can also leverage the SDKs of the mobile API Gateway for mobile security and integration capabilities as well. So one of the things that you may run into is the need to understand the different terminologies that are being used and thrown out in the industry. Like if you think about mobile app building, there is a thing called MADP, which is the third column that you see here, which is mobile app development platforms. These are like large behemoth suites that have everything from soup to nuts that you want to do for mobile and beyond. But it's overkill for developers. It becomes humongously overloaded with a lot of features and stuff that most of them don't even get used, and the developers are left with a overly complex suite that they wouldn't probably be able to use in a much more simplified fashion. RMAD is Rapid Mobile Application Development Set of Tools, and those are predominantly used for building UI capabilities, so drag and drop building UIs and all that. So that would be kind of like complementary to what we are talking about here in terms of backend function. So if UI is RMAT, then you can leverage mobile app services for backend function building. And then the phase that was called mobile backend as a service, MBAS was like kind of a hard thing like in the last 2 or 3 years. But as you can see, it is fading out, it's being phased out. Even Gartner doesn't want to call it MBAS anymore. They want to call it mobile backend services, which is kind of interesting because, we are talking about mobile backend services. Even before we started releasing this product, we've been calling it mobile app services. So it's kind of in tune with what we've been talking about all along. And Gartner and Forrester, everybody took a look at CA mobile app services, and they said, this is very differentiating, very unique for CA to come out with such a product, because with the combination of API management and CA mobile app services, it enables enterprises to not only just do simplified API management, integration, enablement, securing, and all that, but to empower enterprises to go beyond your traditional API access points to mobile devices and to IoT devices as well, and making it much more simplified to actually develop all these kinds of capabilities. So this is a quick checklist to understand what fits where, and for developers, the need is to provide something simpler, and because mobile app services is a bunch of SDKs and open APIs, you can actually quickly use them and combine them, complement them with any of the other open development tools that you may have. So very easy to put them into your library, drag and drop your SDK code in there, and enable complex features like local storage and messaging and all that in a very, very simplified way. Looking at the product family architecture, you can see, as I mentioned earlier, there's a client SDK capability that helps you with mobile app services, backend function building, security SDK and all that on the client side. And then on the server side, you have the mobile API gateway and the mobile app services, sitting on the server side as well. And then the Live API Creator helps with data access, as I mentioned earlier, getting all your data points be exposed as APIs and serve them up through the gateway. And the portal, which helps in building developer communities, and running them through the life cycle of an API and all that. So that kind of acts as an entry point for developers to look at and secure and govern their APIs as well. Now, having said that, this is kind of what we talk about when we say we have everything that you need from API to app or app to API kind of security. So you have you've been thinking about security and all this right from day one and not as an afterthought. That's very important because a lot of people build enterprise apps without thinking through it and end up in a lot of trouble. Like if you think about something as recent as the Nissan Leaf, they exposed an API thinking that it's in the HVAC system, nobody's going to know, or whatever they were thinking. I don't know what was happening, but it was as simple for a developer to get access to that API, knowing that it's unsecured and knowing that it took a VIN number in the URI. It was very easy for them to just hack into it and just substitute that VIN number with any VIN number of a Nissan Leaf and be able to access that Nissan Leaf right from across the world. And not only just access it, but understand and control temperature settings and all that, but also figure out, where the driver has been, understanding the driver history and all that too. So it was a very scary thing for that kind of an API to be sitting out there unsecured like that, and to think that, it came from a very large enterprise that has been, building cars for such a long time. You would think that, they would have a really large IT organization that has been thinking through all this as well. But every single enterprise that we talk to, this would be kind of the story that will backfill that, and they'll go we kind of missed that. We should be thinking about security right from day one. And so that's what we are talking about here in terms of the overall architecture. So I think I'm going to stop right here, and I'm going to hand it off to Josh and have him kind of walk you through the product itself and help you understand how mobile app services actually helps, how easy it is to build applications with mobile app services. And so, Josh, take it away, please.
Thanks so much, Dinesh.
No problem.
Kristen, I'll ask for a quick mic check as well, or are you able to hear me okay?
Yep, you sound great. Thanks, Josh.
Okay. Thanks. All right. So, hi, everyone. Dinesh has done a great job of covering the business value of mobile app services, and I wanted to spend this time, as part of the demonstration to kind of key on that value of speeding up the time that it takes to develop a mobile app, right? And to do that with security and scale. So, the nature of this demo is it won't be quite as exciting as other demos you may have seen, just because we're kind of taking the lens of the developer, right, and trying to understand the operational code that we're taking that burden of writing the operational code away from the developer, so they can really focus on the areas of user experience and branding, right? So that operational code sometimes is not the most exciting thing to demonstrate, but we'll do our best to do that, right? So before we do that, let's go ahead and set up some context around what you'll be seeing today. On screen, I have my mobile device. This is an emulator for a Nexus 6P. It's running Google Lollipop, Android Lollipop version 5.1. On the back end, as Dinesh has mentioned, there's also a server environment that we need to consider as well, right? So this is the back end implementation of our mobile app services that will be supporting the mobile application functions. So that includes our mobile API gateway, the server-side runtime engine that will be hosting all of our back-end services, the OAuth toolkit that will be handling all of the authentication and securing the communications between the services on the gateway and the client app. And then the core mobile app services capabilities like messaging, identity management, and storage, those services are installed as well on the back end as part of the gateway implementation. So keep that in mind as we work through the demonstration that those back-end services are already installed, deployed, and configured in support of this mobile app. So we're going to start real quick with an overview of some of the fundamentals of the mobile app services framework. So the capabilities, the features are divided across several frameworks, as I've mentioned, focused on identity management, storage, and messaging. So common to those features and capabilities then is a set of objects that are setting up the nouns and verbs to perform those operations, right? So on this slide, you can see that there are representations of the device and the user, as well as groups in the identity management context. So this is fundamental to how the features and capabilities are implemented, and this is bundled into what we call the MAS Foundation framework. Now, I'll be demonstrating capabilities in an Android environment where MAS support is from Android releases 4.4 to 6.0. There's also support for iOS, and I've tried to include in the presentation some sample code snippets so that in the iOS world you can also see the level of effort that it takes to implement your mobile app services using our mobile SDK, right? So what you're seeing in the presentation, is just to be clear, is the client-side code that you'll be using built on top of the SDK that will be making the client calls to the mobile backend. So we'll begin with the MAS Identity Management Framework. So users and groups are fundamental to how applications are written, especially when we're talking about the requirements that you need for social and collaborative apps. And so that engagement, right, whether it's using an address book or looking up contacts, you need to be able to access your users and groups, whether it's in your enterprise directory or some other external identity provider. You'll need access to those objects from your mobile app. So this identity management framework exposes those objects to the mobile app for use. You can see that there are methods for performing operations on users and groups as well. So whether it's user creation, group creation, or group membership operations, those capabilities are all built into the framework. And as you can see at the lower end of this slide, that the amount of code that needs to be written to implement this functionality is minimal, right? So there's some setup here in terms of paging so that you can pull back a certain set of records, and then you invoke the operation in a single line of code. So we'll go ahead and jump into our demonstration app. This application it's a wrapper to all of the framework code. You can consider each click then represents really just 1 or 2 lines of code that are written in your Android application. What you're seeing are the high-level frameworks that are represented here as classes. And as I click through some of these classes, you'll see that there will be a listing then of the additional interfaces within that class, the methods, the granular operations that you can perform using that framework itself. So simply to begin using the SDK, all you need to do is to initialize it using the start method, right? So we'll go ahead and start our context. As the framework initializes, it will be loading in a file that contains some configuration information to establish that secure channel of communication with the backend services. So again, I'll just point out it's a single line of code at this point. We'll also start an authentication listener. This is just so that if an operation is called that requires authentication, the application will launch a login dialog to collect credentials. So next, we'll perform some operations as a logged in user. So the next step will be to log in. So again, just keep in mind each click represents one method call in code. We're presented with a dialog. In this case, we have a directory that is, we're integrated with an LDAP on the back end that contains Star Trek characters. We'll go ahead and log in as Derek. And the SDK then on the back end handles all of the device registration steps, the complexity of that. There's a handshake that is performed with our mobile backend to obtain an OAuth access token, and also some PKI in terms of mutual authentication to establish that secure channel with the backend services. So all of that complexity is abstracted away from the code that a developer is responsible to write. So once we're logged in, we can test just an API call to a protected endpoint. We can go ahead and invoke this method call, and this is a string, a JSON representation of a request containing some request data, and the sample response just returns a listing of products for our demonstration API. Beyond simply making API calls, we can also look at ad hoc group management. So in addition to the IDPs that you may have for authentication, really there may be a need to create groups on the fly, separate parallel data stores to your IDP. So we have this concept of ad hoc groups, and we can instantiate new groups, add members to that group as an owner. So we'll go ahead and walk through those steps now. So we'll create a new instance of a group first, and I'll just point out here that immediately Sarek, the user that I'm logged in with, is assigned as the owner of this particular group. The next step would be to name that group that we've just created. We can call those Trekkies. And then we'll save that change. So we'll save that group object to our cloud storage. Next, we'll go ahead and add a member to our group. We can add Spock. We can save that change as well. And as a response, you can see that there's metadata and additional information about the group that's returned. We can also use a get method to fetch all the members of this particular group. And as you can see, there are other getters and setters to perform other operations, group membership operations, using MazGroup. So the next set of capabilities we'll talk through are around messaging. Here, we are enabling sort of that bidirectional real-time messaging using MQTT as the protocol. This is also the underlying framework to support communication for IoT devices as well. So for messaging, what we'll do is, as our logged in user Sarek, we'll go ahead and start listening for our own messages. And I do have a second device ready to go here where I'm logged in as Spock. And we can go ahead and send Sarek a quick note here. We'll send a message to Sarek from our second device. And you can see the message pop up here on our first device. Beyond just simple messaging directly to a user, we can also have the user listen to a particular topic. So we can go ahead and start listening to a topic we'll call penguins. And from the second device, we can go ahead and send a message using that topic. And in this case, we're sending, rather than a simple string text message, we can go ahead and send an image as well. We can pull down that image and we can see it's a character from South Park. So beyond messaging, the final capability that we'll cover here is storage. So the need for secure cloud or local storage, local for those cases where you may need to work offline, no network connectivity, the ability to do that securely and control access to the data that's stored. Those are critical functions for common to many mobile apps. So here we have two flavors of storage, secure storage in the cloud, secure storage locally, and we'll go ahead and cover what that entails as well. So we'll click through to our secure local storage class and our interfaces for storage functions. We'll go ahead and save some data using a key and saving that to a particular segment. So I'll just quickly explain here. There's the concept of segments in our mass storage framework. Each segment, there are 3 listed here. Each segment represents some level of access control to the data contained within that segment. So the first is mass user. The data here is assigned to a user and can be shared across applications where that user is logged in. The second segment here represents application storage. So similar to user, but more broadly, the data is accessible across users for this particular application. And then the third segment would be a combination of user and application for an authenticated user using a particular mobile app. So each segment is represented with an integer as a constant within programmatically. So we'll go ahead and reference segment 1 for user storage. And we can go ahead and even change our object being stored to an image. And we can refer back to that PNG image. Yep. Let's try that once more. We'll re-authenticate. And we'll get back into our local storage function.
Josh, just a quick time check. We have 12 minutes left. Can we stop and do Q&A?
Sure. We can call it.
Hey, hold on a second, please. Josh, are you almost done, or?
Yeah. Let me wrap this up real quick.
Yeah. Let's finish.
Yeah, go ahead. Just wrap this one up.
I think I must have fat-fingered the previous entry. I referred to a file name that didn't exist. So now we have the ability to retrieve the object that we've just stored by key. In this case, I think it was key. And we're able to retrieve the data that we've just stored. And I just wanted to quickly go through this, that in addition to saving and retrieving data, you also have the ability to clear data. I think all these operations are also duplicated in the cloud storage capability, minus delete all, as you don't have the ability to delete for a segment beyond the one that you own. So I'll end it there in the interest of time. Kristen, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks. I'm going to open up a quick poll. It's a Pokemon Go themed poll, so feel free to rate this webcast and respond to the poll that I just opened. But we're opening it up for Q&A now. So if you have a question, you can ask a question here in the chat window, or you can ask a question in the Q&A panel. And you can also ask a question over the phone line by pressing #6 or *6 to unmute your line. If you're on the audio broadcast, you can go into WebEx and select the phone icon with a question mark, and then you'll be able to ask over your computer microphone as well.
Kristen, can you give me presenter rights, please?
Yes.
Thank you. I just want to throw up a little bit on the screen that we get to, talk about as well, So the mobile app services, there's a developer website as well, mass.ca.com, definitely feel free to visit that as a takeaway, as a call to action. So, you know, after the session, if you have more questions, if you want to like explore the SDK, download, you know, the client SDK, we have it on GitHub as an open source code as well. Feel free to download that. There are lots of videos and tutorials and all that available through a lot of links, you know, on the site as well. So take a look at the site, mass.ca.com.
Great, thank you. I also, in the chat window, put links to the API Lunch and Learn series, where you can see all of the upcoming webcasts in this series, as well as past webcasts, and I include links to these slides and replay in that blog post, and then a link to RSVP for the next webcast in the series, which will be exactly 1 week from today, next Thursday at noon Eastern Time. All right, I don't see any questions coming in, but thank you for those who participated in the poll. Josh or Dinesh, was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think I'm good. Josh, do you have anything else?
Nothing on my end.
No questions out there? Come on, someone's going to have one question.
Okay, we appreciate the time spent here. So please follow up through the series and, you know, attend the next session as well with us. Yeah, thank you so much for, you know, staying through and listening in on our presentation.
And if you guys think of any questions after this webcast is over, you can respond to the follow-up email that I'm going to send out later today, or you can comment on the event in the community, and I'll make sure those questions get to Dinesh and Josh. All right, thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your week and a great weekend, and we'll see you next week for the next webcast in this series. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Dinesh.